What are you doing?
This is from DEVS. The episode goes.
What's DEVS?
It's the show we're supposed to. It was the show we were supposed to watch.
Oh, we were supposed to watch DEVS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched every episode of the Cleveland show. Actually, I thought that's what we were doing this episode. I thought we were getting into the Cleveland show.
We very clearly said DEVS last week.
Yeah.
It's
literally,
weird.
like, Isaac recommended it.
Even now, when you guys say DEVS, like, there's this weird thing happening in my mind where I just hear every episode of the Cleveland show.
That is shame.
I was curious because I watched it. I was like, I don't like this at all.
So you're telling me that, like, when we said it in the text, you read Cleveland show and not DEVS as well?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
How was that for you?
I didn't like it the first time. The second time, I thought it was growing on me. By the third time, I was back to hating it again. But I don't know. We'll see where the evening takes me, if there's a fourth round in my future or not.
For example, did you ever want to go one place when the gang wanted to go somewhere else? What did you do? Did you ever want to go one place? What did you do? For example, when the gang wanted to go somewhere else, what did you do?
Can it be, like, really fake laughing?
Yeah, that's fine. 3, 2, 1. And see, what's good about that is now they think that there was a joke that they weren't a part of right before this. Hi, welcome to Tangent. I'm Jamison Weileman.
I'm Isaac Hopwood.
I am Maxwell Mahoney.
And we're having a good old time around here.
Telling jokes.
Jokes.
That you're not a part of.
Yeah. Not talking about heavy subjects at all. No philosophy or, I don't know, theoretical quantum physics or anything like that.
Hey, but now that you're here, that's what you signed up for. We live to provide.
We do?
And in a society.
That didn't work at all.
I don't like that.
Yeah, so last week we ended off begging you, pleading for you to go watch DEVS.
I was held at gunpoint.
Yeah, and you still didn't watch DEVS.
But
you just watched the entire episode
But me being
catalog
held,
of the Cleveland show.
me being held
3
at
times,
gunpoint.
that is.
Yeah, me being held at gunpoint was unrelated to that. I was just telling a story
Yeah, well,
about a thing that did happen.
well,
But
cool.
I guess not really, in case... I guess I should throw that out there that I wasn't actually held at gunpoint. I am being humorous.
Let's
in
be
this
sure
moment.
that every time we tell a joke, we circle back around to like confirm its validity or its truthfulness.
Yeah. I think that's good. In this age of misinformation,
It's vitally important.
fake news, I think that it's our job to deconstruct every single sentence we say, even if it was said in jest.
Perfect.
And that sentence was actually said in jest. So,
I'm going to cut you off before it goes way too deep.
But I've created a paradox.
That's good. So, that being said, going forward, if you haven't seen DEVS and you want to watch it, we're going to be talking about all the spoilers. I'd recommend watching it. It's very cool. To me, we're going to talk about if you guys liked it at all.
Right, yeah.
So, starting now, spoilers ahead. That being said, what'd you guys think about it?
Hot take. I mostly enjoyed DEVS. For 7.5 episodes. That's not it. 6.5 episodes, I thought DEVS was doing real good. Fantastic, even. And then I got this sinking suspicion around 6.5 episodes into this 7-episode series that Alex Garland wasn't going to be able to pull off everything he was trying to do. And I feel as though, yes, I was right. He was not able to pull off everything he was trying to do. And that is, and I think overall, my experience with DEVS was positive. I think it's a very well acted, well directed show. It's emotionally involving and also the opposite of emotionally involving, whatever it means when you're intellectually involving. And yeah, I was stimulated in all the right ways. And I wish I had phrased that much differently than I just did, but we're going to keep it in. Because that's showbiz, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought it was good. I'm a huge fan of pretty much all of Alex Garland's work. But I would kind of agree with Jamison in a way that like I feel like he kept like putting questions on the table, but it was just like the same question to a degree, and not really offering any evidence with answers.
He didn't answer his question. Like
he
did, but he did not provide the reason why he has the answer he has.
Yeah, I mean to a degree, like you don't need I feel like not every movie, TV show, miniseries needs to answer the questions that they throw out to the audience. If anything, we the audience are supposed to try to answer it ourselves. However, I feel like he wasn't giving us enough information to try to answer it ourselves.
I think he gave a ton of information. I feel like there's a difference between an open-ended ending, an ambiguous ending to something like Inception, and what Alex Garland did here, where he does provide an answer. He sets up an issue and then he does provide an in-universe thing that happens. But I don't feel like he did a good enough job of, in that moment, justifying that choice he made. And it's the choice that the whole show hinges upon. In fact, like the entire conceit, that is, of the show hinges on this choice. And I don't feel like he did a good enough job justifying that choice. And that is my thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna run through. I haven't touched on my thoughts. I'm gonna kind of do that as I go along, but I'm gonna run through kind of a very quick summary of the show, just really the skeleton, so that if anyone did stick around that isn't going to watch the show and wants to kind of be on page with what we're talking about, we'll kind of be able to understand. So,
but you got to be careful because skeletons are spooky.
Skeletons can be spooky, and this is no exception.
But
also, regardless of what we said, it's overall still good.
Yes,
I feel like we kind of tore it apart, but no, it's still good.
And I'm going to tear it apart further,
which is fine. I mean, the show kind of asks to be torn apart in some aspects because it is dealing with a lot of big questions and a lot of controversial questions. So I'm excited to do that. But without really touching on any major plot beats, I'm really just going to give the structure of the plot to the extent that our discussion needs to be based upon. You know, you kind of just have to take our word that we enjoyed the acting, we enjoyed the production. You know, it's a beautiful miniseries. The score is incredible.
The needle drops, though.
Yeah. But we're not really going to be talking exclusively about those most of the time. So that's why I'm just giving you the skeleton of the plot. But
real quick, how do you want us to pronounce Sergei? Because we could do it in a fun accent.
No,
I say just pronounce it as the show pronounced it.
Sergei.
So,
anyways, so we start out with the show follows some employees of the tech giant company Amaya, which is headed by tech genius entrepreneur Forrest.
Played by Nick Offerman.
Played wonderfully by Nick Offerman.
He's awesome. And they have a development team called DEVS, which you find out is working on using a quantum supercomputer to track and predict every single particle in the universe to, in essence, allow you to project a simulation of the universe at this very moment in time, or in the past, or in the future. So basically the idea is by using something called determinism, which has to do with, if you can fully understand a single particle, then you'd be able to fully understand all the particles around it, and then you can extrapolate that to everything. And so eventually you'd be able to understand the precise movements, the precise interactions between every particle in the universe. And they use that idea to be able to project forward in time or back in time. And, human behavior is no exception to that, because in determinism, we are just complex series of
Everything
particles.
is cause and effect.
Exactly. And that's a big part of the ideology of the show. And, Forrest uses the term of we're all on tram lines that we can't see. And so the whole gist of the show is that at a certain point in time that is fixed, the computer fails to make a prediction. At a certain point in the future, something happens which completely deteriorates determinism and completely deteriorates everything about cause and effect. And you are following a main character named Lily Chan. Chan?
Ooh.
Chan, I think.
Someone pull up the IMDb page.
I got you.
And in that time, enjoy these clickety-clacks.
Lily Chan. So you're following the main character, Lily Chan, who is works, I believe, in encryption at this company. But it turns out that she is the hinge point of this event that happens that deteriorates cause and effect. And basically what ends up happening is she ends up going to DEVS. This is the last episode. It's really climactic and everything.
Right.
She goes to DEVS, and they show her this projection of what's going to happen. And after she has seen that, she actively defies that projection, which they didn't think was possible.
Right.
And that's why they couldn't see past that point, is because she actually made a choice of free will and broke the laws of determinism.
Right.
So that's kind of like the big point of the show.
Yeah, because you skipped over a whole lot of...
I skipped over like...
gruesome murder
yeah.
and Russian spies with... Mm-hmm. Ooh, I want to say not the best accents I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I like that actor quite a bit, though. I don't want to rag on him and his not the best Russian accent.
Which one?
Sergey?
No, not Sergey.
The guy who played the agent?
Yeah, agent guy. Because I've seen him in other stuff. Specifically, he had a really funny thing that he was on with John Oliver not too long ago. And he's not Russian at all. And... I don't feel like he pulled that accent off. Yeah. I feel like every scene he was in, the emotion of that scene, he was still able to carry it. Mm-hmm. It's just the accent I have a problem with. Everything else, I felt like he did a fine job.
Yeah, I like
this is nitpicky.
And there are certain, if you look up critiques, just like popular critiques, not necessarily like critical reviews and stuff, but popular critiques often point out the acting. But I think a lot of the acting was very intentional, specifically when it comes to Nick Offerman and Allison Pill, who they are both, they are the heads of the DEVS department.
Right.
And of Amaya in general. And I think that they are very apathetic and very standoffish the entire time. And it's like, why are they being so passive, right? Like, just their acting is so passive.
Well, because that's how they view the world.
That's the whole point.
Passive... They are a passive part of the world.
Yeah, because it just like they can't really change anything, so they
they don't believe they can change
nothing.
So they believe that they've harnessed the ability to perfectly see the future, and everything that will come of it, right?
As well as the past.
Yeah. So whenever you see a projection of yourself in one day doing something, then that kind of takes away any agency you may have had beforehand to do anything, right? So,
or they would have argued that it doesn't take away any agency at all because you never had it. It's the illusion of free will.
Yeah.
The idea that you had a choice in the first place. Yeah.
But since they have, since creating the DEVS system, become obsessed with this one event that will shatter determinism, they have lived their lives as just like vessels, like empty vessels that just like do whatever the system tells them to.
Yeah.
Even if it's not quite as mechanical as that, like that's why they are just so like out of body so often, and that's why they don't feel guilt whenever they have to kill somebody for this purpose, and they don't, because their reality is no longer theirs.
It's not even them too. I want to shout out the actors who play the DEVS themselves inside there. Specifically, great, wonderful performance from, I do not know his name. I should have looked it up. He was a priest on Lady Bird who taught them how to cry. And I remember him making such a big, that was such an interesting scene in that movie in Lady Bird. And then having him show up in here, and I thought he was just going to be a background character, but as the series went on, he developed more and more.
It's Stephen McKinley Henderson.
Wonderful performance. He shows so much in his face, and I think that's great. I think he's great.
Yeah, I really didn't do a ton of research into this, but you find out at the end of the show that DEVS is actually a Roman V, so it actually means Deus.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of Alex Garland being a little facetious, since his other movie is Ex Machina, and the term Deus Ex Machina is... So I think it's kind of funny, but
well, you could see this film as a spiritual successor to
Ex Machina.
Yeah, because I mean, it is about
Or a spiritual predecessor in some ways. I mean, this isn't necessarily AI.
Well, like what I mean is like I mean successor as in
like actual successor,
as in like chronologically in the world we live in.
Yeah.
This is
I hear you.
Because they essentially follow very closely connected plot lines of tech developer creates thing, normal person who that is not their field gets wrapped up into it. That's very much what happens in Ex Machina and in this film, to different varying degrees. There's even a guy gets invited to facility type of thing where he is introduced. If you replaced Llewyn Davis, Oscar Isaac, that is, with Nick Offerman, like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, and it seems like Alex Garland really likes that formula for one reason or another, and both stories are effective, but they also have their shortcomings.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if it is a formula, but it's also like it's like a weird twist on the hero's journey, if you can call it the hero's journey. It's like it's literally just that person gets taken out of their element, sort of thing, and have to face a thing from the outside world. I'm not going to go through the whole story structure wheel here, but like
and I think that in DEVS specifically, Garland really shows, part of this, there's an underlying theme of the unnecessary power that tech companies have with the amount of information that they can gather.
Yeah.
Because both of these companies are supposed to be Google, right?
Yeah, Google or Apple or any of these places that...
Data mine, I guess.
Yeah, or not data mine per se, but data mine.
Like
but
information is their currency.
Yeah, or like the fact that I would say that this is more about these people who create things without thinking through it all necessarily.
About their like implications.
About the implications. That's literally what what's his name says at that one point where he shuts off the thing and they drop.
Stewart.
Right? Stewart he literally just says like you didn't
realize
know what you created here. Like Mark Zuckerberg, when he created Facebook, wasn't trying to undermine American democracy. Yeah. But that's a result of that.
And to an extent, that is the story of how they created DEVS. Yeah. Because Forrest lost his daughter. And in a sense, he was trying to... So I didn't really fully catch on to this the first time I watched it, but my second watch through that I just did, his whole purpose with starting the DEVS program was to resurrect his daughter, Amaya. Yeah. And the whole thing with like the weird lab where they put the dead bodies or the dead rats and stuff is, they're able to understand everything about that rat and then resurrect it in the simulation. Yeah. And it is fully like in every aspect that rat for all intents and purposes. And in the end, after Lily and Forrest die, they're resurrected into the same simulation. It's the same idea. So I wanted to talk about... Let's pull this up here. So I wanted to talk about the simulation. I chatted with Max a little bit while you were still watching the show. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, like, your prediction at the time was that they were, like, living in a simulation. Yeah. And that the dev system was, like, a controller for the simulation.
Yeah, pretty much. Kind of like the Matrix a little bit. Yeah. Somewhat.
And that it ended up kind of being the case in some ways. There's a lot of theories out there that talk about how
we might be in a simulation.
That there's that scene in episode 7, which is the second to last episode, where Stewart's talking about like it's the box within a box, and the box contains everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is like the likelihood of them being the prime universe, quote unquote, like the one real universe. Yeah. Is pretty unlikely.
And people would say that about our universe as well. Like people would say that it's unlikely that we don't live in a simulation.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of a very determinist point of view, right? My opinion is that I think that they were living not in a simulation because whenever Lily made that choice of free will, it would have broken the whole thing.
I don't agree.
I kind of disagree too. We mentioned. I feel like it wouldn't break the simulation simply because she like didn't go along with it. I feel like that wouldn't break the simulation, but it would break the construct of free will for sure. Or not.
What do you mean by that?
Like I feel like free will, the idea of free will and simulation are two separate concepts. So like, she can still have free will in a simulation to a degree.
Yeah.
But you cannot have free will in a place where there is not free will. If that makes sense.
Well, let's actually talk about that, because I disagree and agree to an extent. So let's talk about The Matrix for a moment. A movie that I watched with you guys once and said was a dumb action movie that I didn't get. Because I was wrong. Like, incredibly wrong. Because
the movie freaking rocks.
Well, no, because The Matrix is very literally about free will. Mm-hmm. Very, like, on a philosophical level, that movie is about free will. It is about realizing you live in a simulation. And the idea that once you are aware that you are in a simulation, then you gain free will. Because then you realize that this is not real, there is no spoon, and now I can do what I want. Mm-hmm. It is the idea in philosophy that you were born without free will. And then when you realize this, when you have that moment of self-actualization, or it is shown to you like it is, because people have to be shown it in the Matrix series. You know, no one comes to that conclusion on their own for the most part.
And that's the same in this series.
Yeah, it is in this series. This is the idea that once you become aware that you are in a simulation, that is when you can then make a decision. Yeah. Once you're aware, that's when you gain it. If it's possible to.
Yeah. The one deviation with DEVS, which this is how I visualized it. So Forrest talks about how we're on tram tracks.
Yeah.
And tram tracks can split, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they are set, or I guess I'm thinking of train tracks, but I think trams work about the same.
Pretty much.
And it's set on a single path.
Yeah.
You can't change the tracks unless you have the lever to do it.
Yeah.
So, in essence, the DEV system is the lever.
Yeah.
That changes the path.
It is the pill without meaning to be the pill. If going back to that Matrix analogy, because it is the thing that makes you realize you are in a simulation.
Yeah.
Because because that's the statement it makes, is you are part of a simulation. But once you are aware of that, does it change? DEVS, the show, says yes, but I don't feel like it does that very well. I guess. Can we talk about that, or do we want to save that for a while? Okay, so
Max, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back a little bit to the idea of like living in a simulation means you don't have free will.
Yeah.
To a degree, like obviously, like when you live in a simulation, you're making decisions based off of that simulation.
Right.
However, I still feel like you, and to a degree, have free will. Even though those, like, say, like in the Matrix per se, like you're a businessman and this business doesn't actually exist. But regardless, you're still making decisions for that business. It's just like fake decisions because it's a simulation. Yeah. But I still feel like that's free will.
Yeah.
Even just because you wake up doesn't mean that like you're just making the true decisions rather than the false decisions. Yeah. But regardless, those are still decisions.
And I think that's where DEVS touches on something that the Matrix doesn't, which is, determinism, which has to do with, right, like, it doesn't matter if you feel like you're making that decision. Like, DEVS would say that even after you out of the quote-unquote simulation, you still don't have free will. Mm-hmm. Because you are still made out of particles that have predictable motion, that are interacting with other particles that also have predictable behaviors, right? And then that we are able to, that no matter what, unless we have that lever, right? Yeah. We are preset on reaching a certain end.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's kind of helpful to blend those two a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I will say this right here. This is going to sound like a weird hot take, but I want you to roll with me. We are 100% in a simulation. I know that sounds very weird, but let me explain my thing. The world you see, that you hear, and that you feel is just what your brain tells it is. It's not the actual world. It's images your brain flashes in front of your head like a screen. What you experience as reality is your brain simulating reality. We do live in a simulation, 100%, yes, that's the reality we live in. Like, that's it. Like,
we just live in our own simulation.
Yes, that our brains kind of create for us. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, we don't hear sound when it happens, because sound takes time to travel to our ears. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly living in the past, even if it's by, milliseconds of a millisecond of a millisecond.
Yeah.
Like you are in the past. Like it takes time for the neurons when you touch something to reach your brain to tell you touched something.
Yeah.
Like you are living in the past in a simulation created by your brain.
Which the same question, that brings up a question that is also brought up at the end of DEVS whenever Lily and Forrest are in a simulation. Does it matter? Right? Like, in the end, is in DEVS, whenever it is a literal simulation, they're living inside of a computer. The last scene you see is Lily going and finding Jamie again and them hugging, cut to black, right? And the implication is that she is accepting where she is and she's choosing to live regardless. Yeah. And I feel like there are so many things that you can argue about with philosophy and with science about, does it really matter? Like of our brain being a simulation, or is like the way I see blue, is that the same way you see blue?
Yeah, that gets into what I was even going to mention that, but I feel like,
it's the same conversation, right? It's all a figment of, it's all a projection of what our brain interprets, but does it really matter?
No, because you live in a simulation. So this is my opinion, I guess, because...
And there's not really a way to break it, per se.
Yeah, reality is what reality is. And in the world of DEVS, that, like, it's called DEVS because they created a world. And actually, because of all the multiverse theory stuff that the show gets into, infinite worlds. Infinite worlds. They created them in that moment. They did that. That's the thing. It's called DEVS because they're God. Like, it's so literal. Like, it is very, very literal. It even gets into it with the philosophy of it. There's so much religious imagery in this show.
From episode 1, like, just even the music that's a very, very big theme.
It sounds like a chant, like a monk chant or something like
almost
that.
Almost like something you'd like hear in a Catholic church.
Or being said in Elvish while Aragorn rides into battle.
For sure.
That you don't get that, Max, because you have not seen the Lord of the Rings movies.
Boy.
Have you not? Wait, really? We can talk about that.
Wait, no, that's the first tangent of this episode. Max hasn't seen the Lord of the Rings.
Here we go.
What does it say about determinism?
I thought we've been over this, Isaac. We've been over this.
I just forget that you're so big into movies. Like,
Max,
you don't have to read the books first.
I'm getting to a point where I'm considering just binging the movies.
Max has heard many people do a Golem impression without even knowing how annoying it is.
I've seen The Hobbit.
Oh my god, you've seen The Hobbit?
Don't think that I'm basing my ideas of Lord of the Rings off of The Hobbit.
Wait, all 3 of the Hobbits?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Because I've read The Hobbit.
Okay. Yeah, so that was a great experience for you, I bet.
Yeah. The Hobbit's great.
Yeah.
But give me some credit here. I own steelbooks of all 3 of the movies. And
that's right.
For 4 years.
You have. I was there when you got those.
Man, okay, well...
But I've still never seen them.
Yeah. You really need to.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to be talking exclusively of Lord of the Rings, and Max needs to watch all of them.
It is a quiz for Max. It is a test. It is that.
Yeah. On another note, I actually am, in the fall, for my university classes, I'm taking a course on Tolkien, and we're reading through the whole Lord of the Rings, and I'm very excited.
But are you reading his translation of Beowulf?
I have that on the shelf, actually.
Oh, you do?
No joke.
I have a copy of that. I want to see if it's our same copy.
Dang, this is the biggest tangent.
No, it's not. Mine's paperback.
This is for sure the biggest tangent we've ever gone on.
You can even go ahead and take this back, because mine is a paperback, and I think it's in my car right now.
Yeah.
I think it's...
Well, that was from your, what class was it? Religion class? Which one?
Beowulf for religion?
History, we were going to read Beowulf, which is a thing. Like, I get it's an
Wait,
epic
and you were gonna read the Tolkien translation?
Yes.
I feel like Tolkien probably does the most, like...
It was part of the curriculum for the class. Like, it was a required book to have. I had to purchase it.
That's pretty
epic. Then I dropped out.
Honestly, I mean, Beowulf's pretty cool, so...
Yeah, you got Grendel and I just lost everything.
It's been a long time. I don't remember anything. Yeah. Where were we?
Tangent.
Oh, right. Sorry. Max hasn't seen Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
that Monk Chants, the
Monk
music
Chants.
of the show,
Yeah.
religious imagery.
Yeah.
Look at that.
There, we're back. We're back.
We went on like 3 tangents there.
That's good. So I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about an idea of, I came up with this phrase and I was very proud of it.
I bet you were.
The binary of determinism, :
That's a video essay title.
The binary.
For sure.
Okay, I'm not done yet. It's even more so.
Oh.
The apathy in knowing everything and the fear in knowing nothing.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
So, anyways, this is kind of
Am
has
I going
to
to
do
need
with...
to memorize that?
Yeah. Take out your notepads. So, this is the idea of what Forrest and Katie, like everything that their character's about, and it's kind of the pitfalls of determinism, right? And at least in the sense when sorry, might be able to hear my cat.
Oh, you can hear. You could have. I have no doubt you could have heard those cats for like the last 10 minutes, and I wanted to bring it up, but I thought no, it's more fun as an Easter egg for the audience listening.
Yeah.
Get a peep of these cats going to town.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty. They're just at the door.
they're at the door. They're at the door,
Meowing.
vocalizing.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
It's great. So, they are so apathetic because they know the future. And then whenever Lily breaks that future, like, it is nothing but absolute fear, And I think
I disagree, actually, because I feel like the moment she breaks that future, like, she releases them, and like the look I saw on their face was first confusion and then joy. Of like
that was not what I got.
I
got
not get
absolute terror.
You didn't
I
see
did
that?
too.
You
No,
didn't see
I
that?
got terror.
I felt like relief. Like I saw them being scared for a moment, but like I felt this release. I thought like they know now. They know that they're free.
I would say to a degree that like throughout the show they took comfort in the fact that they had tram lines.
Yeah.
That like
No,
to
because-
a degree like they couldn't blame themselves for some of the actions.
I think they started out that way, but like Forrest is eaten up with guilt for all the death and hurt he causes. Like there's that scene where they're just sitting in the field and they talk about whether or not we're magical thinkers, in which we assume we have free will, in which we don't. That is her trying to convince him that, hey, it sucks that Sergei got dead. By the way, Sergei died. I know.
They killed him.
Yeah, they super killed him.
But I think
super
that
dead.
it's kind of the whole time is them wrestling their human empathy.
Yeah.
To bring that up again.
Yeah.
To wrestle their natural human empathy with their brain, which to them, they know that they have no choice. And they know that they are on these tram lines that are absolutely bound for this destination.
Okay, so there's a chance I was projecting onto them in those moments.
You were just so happy.
No, yeah, because I'll be real with you guys in a way that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. I watched the first episode of DEVS months ago before we even talked about having a podcast together. Not having a podcast, but this podcast together.
Yeah.
And my brain does this thing where it'll latch onto a concept and then it won't let me not think about it to a point that it kind of becomes agony. That's a weird way of putting it. I think that some people call it obsessive whatever. I don't want to get into it because I feel like talking about it in these kind of terms is ignorant of me, and I don't want to diagnose myself with something. I feel like that's stupid, especially when there are people who actually deal with stuff. But like when I watched the first episode of DEVS, I felt numb on the inside, and I just I shut down for like a day or two. That's a weird thing to say, but it's very much the truth, is that all I could think about from those days was free will and how it applied to me. And it was a very sad time for me because because it was literally, and it's not so much that like the ideas itself were like new to me or anything, but it's just that for some reason in that moment, my brain just latched onto them and it just kept like a hamster wheel that I couldn't get off of inside my head. It just these ideas floating around of like, there's no meaning. And that's a hard thing for your brain to process on a near constant basis for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even the first time something like this has happened to me with an idea before. It's something that I've dealt with all my life, is that if an idea comes across that's particularly challenging to my worldview, I'll beat myself with it. And that sucks a little bit. I'll be real with you. So I was actually apprehensive about returning to this show. And I didn't say that to you guys because that is an embarrassing thing for me, I guess, or an uncomfortable thing. You know, I definitely had a point to this, didn't I?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what it was now.
I can pretty easily go off of that point, and you can return to it if you need to.
Thank you.
But,
I'm sorry about that. Sorry for getting heavy, audience members.
No, but the thing is, this idea is pretty heavy, right? Because whether or not we want to accept it, and I know there are people out there who don't believe in free will.
That's what it was. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
That release was me feeling relief. Because even though I don't feel like the show supported its opinion well enough that for her to have made a free will decision like that. Yeah. Because the show's basic after that, like, it doesn't say, like, it doesn't talk about her. It doesn't talk about that there is no spoon moment of her, like, realizing that. Forrest grabs her by the shoulder and says, "You're the special one." I feel like that's lame. I feel like it's like, you were able to do this because you were special is a lame way of doing that.
The chosen one.
Yeah, I feel like that's a dumb narrative decision. Like, I get that a lot of the show is about her character and how she constantly rebels, and they set up that she would rebel. But why she's special, why she's the only one who gets to do that out of anyone. Maybe they're trying to say something about her spirit as a person. Like, they even have that talk about, like, are we magicians at that one point. But, like, that was my release in that moment for those characters where I'm like, you get to have free will. Yeah. And that was happy for me, even though maybe you guys are right. Maybe that is terror, but that's how I. And in the end, we can trust that Katie, who's Allison Pill, that her life will probably be better after this. Like, understanding that all of their lives will be better. I mean, right? Like,
and I wanted to circle around to this article that I read from The Atlantic. I'll put a link in the show notes to it. But it has to do with the idea of free will and does it matter what the truth is about it versus the impact it has on our psychology, right? Yeah. So regardless of what you believe about free will, there's ample evidence that the belief of free will increases agency, increases confidence, increases happiness, right? So, like, for people, I won't go into, like, the nitty gritty of the experiment exactly, but so I'll read this little quote from here. It says, "When asked to take a math test with cheating made easy, the group primed to see free will as an illusion proved more likely to take an illicit peek at the answers. When given the opportunity to steal, to take more money than they were due from an envelope of $1 coins, those whose belief in free will had been undermined pilfered more. And then alternatively, they measured to the extent that which a group of day laborers believed in free will, then examined their performance on the job by looking at the supervisor's ratings. Those who believed more strongly that they were in control of their own actions showed up on time for work more frequently and were rated by supervisors as more capable. The belief in free will turned out to be a better predictor of job performance than established measures such as self-professed work ethic and so forth." And those are just a couple of ways of measuring. But I think what we can take from that is, people who believe that their actions have consequences and then their actions actually mean something, they are more likely to succeed, not only in, like, the business sense, but, like, in the actual, like, life sense, right? Like, you live life to the fullest whenever you believe that your actions actually mean something. And that doesn't talk about, like, the philosophy of whether or not that's actually true or factual or, like, what the science is behind it. But it, we as a species are clearly, we're meant to, like, our brains are wired to believe in free will and act with that belief in that agency, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Can we just talk about our own theories, or do we want to wait and save that for later or something like that? Can I talk about my thing?
Yeah.
Free will, I guess? Or
like whether
in
real life, we believe in it?
Yeah, or I just want to give my spiel, I guess.
Sure.
Because I've had so much time to think about this. Because like I said, I'll be real with you guys. I developed my own opinion on this stuff in that, like, 2 or 3 day span where I was being miserable with myself.
Real quick, before you dive in, Max, did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
Yes.
I did not. I'm still processing.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry. This is a lot. But again, I feel this is weird because I feel like I have a slight leg up on you guys because my brain hates me. But it's raining and it's beautiful.
It is. Yeah.
I have a couple things to say. I don't believe in free will up to a point. That's a weird thing to say. But here's my thing.
What do you mean by that, though? Because like
every human being on the planet is shaped by their environment, not by who they are. There are two
Okay.
things that make you who you are as an individual.
Mhm.
It is your environment, your brain chemistry.
Mhm.
And it is those two things interacting with each other that shape who you are as a person. Someone who grows up in an area of racist people probably is going to be racist because that's their environment. And we see that. Like, you are your environment. However, we have logic and reasoning, and we have recall. Our ability to have memory and to recall experiences and then use that as imperfect as a system as that is, and our ability to use that memory, recall, logic, and reasoning, these things kind of, the idea of determinism and particles interacting with each other is super reductive, because how those particles interact with each other is amazing. Like, your brain is a supercomputer that can run logic and reasoning, and it can figure things out, and it can make decisions based on logic and reasoning. I think that there's an extent to where my brain runs on autopilot, in which I don't use those things, and in those moments I do not have free will. If I suddenly decide I want a burger, it's probably because something in my environment triggered my brain to think about burgers, and then I wanted to go get a burger. And that's not free will. That is those particles interacting with each other. But also, I'm also able to capture that thought if I'm able to self-actualize, and I can use logic and reasoning behind that, and I can decide not to get a burger. But also, is that logic and reasoning there because of my environment? It's an endless rabbit hole of whatever. I think that we have the ability to use logic and reasoning. I think, unless those are illusions too, in which I don't think they are, because logically they are not. But I think that...
It's a foolproof argument right there.
Yeah, I know, isn't it though? Someone else will tear me apart for this, and I'm fine with it. Whatever. But like, if I can use logic and I can reason correctly, and there's a debate to, whether or not I can make decisions based on past experience. I cannot touch a hot stove, or I can choose to touch a hot stove. If I have a memory of that stove being hot, I can use that memory to tell myself that will hurt. And then it's based on my brain chemistry to say, do I want to hurt right now? Which is weird. But like, we have the ability to take in information and use that and reason and logic. And I think that within that mechanism, what we can call free will exists. But that involves being aware that you live in a simulation. It involves that matrix philosophy. And that's my thought on that, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the big counterpoints, it's not necessarily counter, but it's just in addition to, is the idea that there is something more than just brain chemistry.
Right.
Which is kind of a hard conversation, especially when our conversation so far today has been very scientific. But it's the idea of, a vast majority of the people on the planet believe in afterlife, or believe in
the soul.
The soul.
Yeah.
And if not the soul, then like more of just like the spirit and like something within us that's not fully physical.
Well, the show even mentioned, what was it? Like the idea of consciousness, like our very consciousness, our ability to think and perceive reality as being a thing that can affect and have change on reality itself. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting, like point to put in there. Your cats are perceiving that door right now, maybe scratching on it.
They are. Maybe the rain's bothering them a little bit, and they're trying to get some movement. But.
Yeah.
Solace.
So yeah, it's something that we don't have the answer to, but it's always interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and here's my thing about it all, that I never understood. These ideas don't make me less empathetic towards people; they make me more. Like, my enemy is my enemy as a result of not always things they've had the ability to control. People get hurt, and hurt people, whatever that phrase, but it's true. We are the things that people pour into us. Yep. And sometimes this person I'm angry at, this person who said something I disagree with, someone who said something terrible online on the internet, somebody who hurt another person, that person is actually someone I can empathize with as a person who's not always fully in control of the way their brain works. And that sucks. But also, because of this knowledge and the fact that we know human beings can change, we can put out good ideas into the world and we can make each other better, because that's what it is the more knowledge we have, the more we have the ability to use logic and to reason. And those things can be sources of fantastic empathy for one another as human beings. Once we know that this person is somebody who can be helped, no matter how far gone they seem they are, and maybe I don't want to get into the argument that there's a point where it's too far gone, but even these people that we find despicable, and I'm not saying we don't fight against bad ideas or even mock them. I'm all for it. When people do bad things, it's important that we fight back against that. But also we can use empathy and learning. And once we can share knowledge with each other, we can be Neo, waking people up in the Matrix and showing them that this is a simulation, but we can love each other. And that's something I never understood about Nick Offerman and what's her name's character, is that they find this out, and they, instead of sharing what they've learned and sharing their ideas with the world, they do cut themselves off, and they use it for personal gain. And they would argue that they had no choice but to use it for personal gain. But that's clearly a result of their environment, who they are as people.
I think one interesting concept that the show kind of discusses is like obviously we're talking about like there's no free will in the show. Yeah. But regardless, they're not making those decisions simply because they don't have free will. Regardless, they make those decisions still because they have a reason in their mind. Yeah. I think that whatever I can't remember the character name, but the kid, what was his name? Lyndon. Yeah. So the scene on the bridge, I remember Katie specifically telling him that in a few moments he's going to get out and he's going to stand on the concrete. And at the time for him, that was that's completely outrageous. Why the heck would I do that? Yeah. And then as she goes throughout explaining why he's going to be doing that, it ends up making perfect sense to him why he would do that, and then he does it. So he didn't have free will in that moment. He still ended up doing it, but he regardless still had that justification for why he's doing the thing he's doing. He wasn't doing it for no reason, simply because he didn't have a choice. He had a reason to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And are you arguing that is or is not free will?
I mean, I would say it's still not free will, but we still make those decisions for a reason. Yeah.
And maybe that reasoning is enough. You know what I mean?
That's when I was talking about earlier, that's kind of what I meant. Was existing within the mechanism of reality are the building blocks to reason and to making decisions based on logic and reasoning, even if those logic and reasonings are flawed. And within that mechanism, perhaps we can ascribe the phrase of what we call free will. Maybe it's not exactly what we feel it is in our brains, but maybe, within how our brains work, within recall, within logic, within reasoning. And this could all be hopeful talk as well. Yeah. I know I sound like such a pessimist this episode.
Well, but on the flip side of that, right, we don't live in the Matrix. Or at least
I know. I've used that as a metaphor.
But if we did, there's nothing we could do about it. Yeah. Right? But the point is maybe getting out of the Matrix in this sense, right, is making conscious decisions and taking agency against our natural desires for laziness, for laziness or for apathy,
going on autopilot
or indifference or autopilot, right? Actively rebelling against those tendencies, or maybe that's the way that we can use our free will whenever our chemistry is trying to take over.
Yeah, right? Mindfulness. Yeah, that's if we can put any agency out into the world, it is through mindfulness and about thinking about our actions, about ascribing, about tracing back our thoughts. I do this all the time now? I think, why am I making the decision I am making right now? Mm-hmm. And it's surprisingly helpful to me. It really contextualizes why I'm doing things right now. There is a trail in my head, even if it's a false trail, of why I'm thinking the ways I do. For instance, that song, I played a goofy song for you guys earlier.
It's like Blue Moon or something like that.
Yeah, Blue Moon. It's the final song to the end of the movie An American Werewolf in London. It's a fantastic needle drop moment in that movie. Tangent the second. How about that? We're talking about American Werewolf in London. But I could have, at the time that I played it, it's lost to memory now, and I even think I did in the car with you, trace back why I was playing that song right then in that moment with you. I did it in my head, But when I was choosing a song to put over your car radio, I did think I had already knew that it was going to be Blue Moon, and then I walked back why it was Blue Moon in my head, because I do that now, and there's some things I'm just okay with having on autopilot. Because there's a reason my brain wanted to hear Blue Moon, and my brain
and it satisfies.
And my brain released dopamine when it heard it. It was
right.
like, oh baby, oh yeah, let's hear that nonsense. He starts that song off with that beautiful scatting, and then we'll get into the lyrics that aren't that great, but we're grooving, we're grooving,
Yeah,
and you get that serotonin now, and I'm like, thank you, brain.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, these are all big ideas, but I think we can, by taking agency, by being mindfulness, by being mindful, it's kind of acting on that free will that we do have, and there's evidence to show that is helpful. So let's
can we if we don't have enough time, cut this out or whatever, but can we talk about little small moments that we liked from devs? I mean, outside of big ideas or plot, we can talk about structure and screenwriting and all that stuff, just even if for like a 5-minute period, because I would love that jazz if we could. Can we?
I mean, yeah, we can talk about that jazz.
Good. We are now entering the fun zone of the podcast, the nerdy zone. None of that non-nerdy talk about philosophy and
philosophy,
quantum physics. We didn't even get into the whole multiverse theory that the show was going on there for a second. Go watch the show if you haven't.
There's so much that we didn't talk about
because we couldn't, because it would take.
And it's way out of our league, honestly.
There's also so many characters we haven't even mentioned.
We're out of our depth. Speaking of characters we haven't mentioned, when did you guys know the homeless guy was a Russian agent? I want to hear. When did you know? And it's cool if it was in that moment.
I mean, I never knew, but I knew, like, obviously there was something going on with him, because, like, he kept showing up, and I was like, well, he can't keep showing up if there's no reason.
First watch through, I didn't know for sure anything until he busted in and saved Lily, but second watch through, obviously knowing that he was, it's one of those things that's like, it's obvious if you're vigilant, but
the idea that he was a Russian agent popped in my head when he stared down the world's worst human being. And I can say that without empathy because he's a television character and I can hate him with my entire body and passion. And I do. Kenton, was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that guy sucks.
The security guard.
Yeah, when Mr. Russian agent stared him down and he's like, "You aren't afraid of me. Why is that?" And that's when it occurred to me in my head that a homeless guy is going to have a bigger part in this, which is something I actually really love about this series, is how they introduce something that you think is going to be a background element and then it becomes into the foreground. That's something that's great. I love that of this show. We talked about minor characters getting bumped up. But then there's a moment where Jamie, right? Mm-hmm. That's his name, is talking to Mr. Homeless Guy Russian Agent.
Pete.
And Pete is his name. Which we can then pre-associate his name as Peter. With a Y. There's a Y.
I don't think he's Russian.
He is Russian
in ethnicity. Whenever he he had like a character voice, quote unquote.
He counted down in Russian.
I know. I think he was like an American hired by the Russian agency. Like I think.
You were talking like a man who's never seen the television show The Americans, but that's for another day.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like after he kills Kenton, and then he he had like a weird like accent before, but then he drops the accent, and it's just a normal American accent.
Also, Peter might be my favorite character in the show. I should mention that, even for like a
Peter as in Pete.
Yeah,
the homeless guy.
Yeah, he might be my favorite character
Peter?
in the show.
Actual?
I don't know. I'm calling him Peter now,
okay,
and in my head it's spelled with a Y.
He's cool.
It's super Russian.
He's cool.
Like there's that scene where that guy's just playing the guitar out in the park,
and he's like dancing.
That is a Russian agent who knows when to find joy in like the moments, or he's like method acting. Like that man's like method. He's Daniel Day-Lewis in his part. He's like a homeless man would dance to this.
Yeah. Okay, you said that there was a specific moment.
He's talking to Jamie. Earlier in the show, Jamie's like, "I'll pay you $10 if you never talk to me again." Right? And he gives him $7.50, if I remember correctly. It was not $7.10 maybe? It was not the correct amount.
No, he gives him 20.
No.
He does.
You're incorrect.
I'm pretty sure it was 20.
It was 20. He said, all I've got is a 20.
That might be Freudian.
I remember he gave him he gave him more than he offered in the first place.
I thought it was less.
It was more.
No,
Fine,
more.
doesn't matter. It's cool that it's more. Doesn't really affect any change in any way.
Okay.
In what I'm saying.
So
moments later, after they returned from that episode 7, they returned back to Lily's apartment after having a talk with Forrest and Katie. Yeah, they returned back there, and Pete looks up at Jamie and says, "Oh, I remember our deal. I'm not gonna say nothing. Nada, zilch, niet," which is the Russian word for no. And that's when I knew. That's when it was confirmed in my head that he was the Russian agent.
that is very, very good. That is definitely not. That did not enter my suspicion at all. That is clever, and that's probably really good writing too.
Oh yeah, like I knew in that moment. I suspected, because here's the deal. Some of this just goes into like knowing about screenwriting. You don't introduce an element in the first half of your thing if it doesn't have a payoff. The Russian guy being shown in that episode and then dying in the most horrific neck snap ever filmed on anything ever.
Oh jeez, yeah.
Yeah, like that is an element that is introduced and then it has no payoff because he's dead. So you have to think to yourself, where's the payoff to this Russian thing that just happened? Unless it was a 1 episode payoff. If you're a good writer, you have a payoff to that. Yeah. And then here comes this character, Pete. He's always out in front of the house. And I'm thinking in my head, he's here. Now he's showing protective sort of qualities towards Lily. And then he's not afraid of Kenton. There's even like an almost immediate adversarial thing in there because like, you know, Kenton's ex-CIA, right? Yeah. And here's a literal Russian agent, enemy of the state, right in front of him. There's this adversarial tension based on like who they are as people immediately. I think they recognize that in each other, but Kenton's a little too stupid and dumb.
Yeah, I don't think Kenton fully catches on. Like, it probably is in the back of his mind, but he's so fired up by the time he goes to take out Jamie and Lily that he doesn't even think about it. Yeah, so like it's there. It's always there. And I'm thinking in my head, this is my payoff because Alex Garland is a good screenwriter. So he will have a payoff to an element that he introduced. Yeah. And so with that in mind, which is not how you're supposed to watch TV, by the way. Like I should mention this. This is not the correct... If there is a correct way, there is no correct way to watch or engage with art. It's however you want to. That's the beautiful thing about art, is that it's personal. Yeah. But if with that in mind in my head, I knew that he was a Russian agent. I kind of, you know, at a certain point in watching shows and movies and stuff, I kind of stopped trying to guess what would happen in the movies and in the television shows, just because it's the same reason why I stopped filming videos at concerts. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same root in me that's just like, I just want to, like, be there, right? Because I found that the payoff for being convinced and then like feeling the jar, like the jarring movement of like, oh, suddenly he's the Russian agent, like being kind of fooled, quote unquote, by Alex Garland. I find that more enjoyable, even though with some critical thinking I may have been able to figure it out. I found that just being in the waves of it is enjoyable.
I will say that I felt real joy hearing him say "not yet." Niet in that moment. That
because you figure it out, like it clicks.
I was like, your boy is the embodiment of Sherlock Holmes. I am the master of deductive reasoning. Give me some heroin, I'll shoot it up and I'll solve a murder. That's because Sherlock Holmes used heroin. I'm not a heroin user. It's canonical.
Anymore.
Shut up, Max.
Wow, okay.
This was all said in jest. That's a little callback. Look what we're doing. We have our own callbacks.
Yeah. Max, did you have anything you wanted to point out about the show before we move to the break?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watch DEVS. Yeah. And let's go to the break.
Insert the break music.
Boo, 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 boo.
Insert it.
Boo, boo, boo. Boo, 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 boo.
Insert.
Boo, boo, boo.
We're so off time from each other. It hurts me. It hurts my body. It's physical. It's physical.
Well, welcome to the Podcast Recommends, where we give you more things to read, watch, listen, enjoy, ponder.
A recommendation, you could say.
It's a recommendation. I'm going to start this week because mine is directly in front of me.
Nice.
It is a novel called Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman. Have either of you read this?
I don't read.
I haven't even heard of it.
Your recommendation 2 weeks ago was a book.
Oh, I even wanted to talk about that because that book has a lot to do with free will. That would have been so great for this episode.
Dang.
But now I won't.
Perfect. Max, you said you hadn't heard it?
No.
So it's a very good novel. It's really short. Let me look at the page count. 140. So it's really short. And it is...
I've read the backs of cereal boxes that were longer. I butchered this.
It had good bones. I like it.
Okay.
It's really enjoyable. I'm kind of sticking with the science theme of this episode. If you enjoyed listening to this episode of the podcast, you would probably enjoy this book. It is kind of historical fiction a little bit. So it's called Einstein's Dreams because it's about a series of dreams that Albert Einstein had, supposedly. I mean, it's fiction. A series of dreams he had when he's trying to come up with the theory of relativity. Each of the chapters is like 5 pages maximum, and they're each a different dream where time works completely differently. And it's really fascinating because on top of it being like...
When was that published?
It was published in the 20th century. 1993.
Do you think that had any influence on Inception? With the dreams working at different times?
It could have. Maybe, yeah. I mean, so it's generally more complex and more creative than that.
Yeah.
Because
Inception's the least creative thing on the planet.
I mean, it's just like time is fast, time is slow, time is slower.
Christopher Nolan's lame, uncreative, and he's never done anything interesting. And I will not be in the front row of Tenet whenever it is released in theaters, whenever that is. I will not be in the front
IMAX.
row. Yeah, in IMAX, watching every single second of that in rapture. That is not my current plan.
You heard it. You heard it here. Jamison hates Nolan.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Hot take. I don't have a steelbook of Inception in my house.
Hey, listen. He didn't say it in jest, so you know it's true.
Yeah.
So each of the chapters is different. It's a different way to view time. So like some of them are like time is cyclical and like time is only one day and it repeats over and over, or like no one ever dies. And so like everyone is always like subject to the judgment of their parents and their parents' parents, and it's like no progress is ever made because like older generations are always being so judgmental of younger generations, and you feel so much pressure.
I can't relate to that at all.
And my personal favorite one is the idea that there's one that talks about how time moves slower whenever you're further off the ground. Which is opposite to how time actually works whenever you're...
Yeah, that was his, like, that's what Einstein's theory of relativity, like...
Yeah, like, higher gravity, like, gravity and time are related.
It's almost like there was a movie that had this concept in it by a well-known science fiction director. Interstellic?
Something like that.
It'll come to me, maybe.
But my favorite because it touches on human, like the way that society is built around things that we commoditize.
Oh my goodness, I can't think. I had it at the tip of my tongue too, and now it's gone forever.
So, in this world where time it's only like a couple seconds, where it's like a millisecond. It's like very minor, but it becomes the object of status, right? So people live on top of mountains, and the higher altitude you live, the richer you are because time moves slower, so you live longer. And this society is built on just like having the highest possible structures for luxury's sake.
Oh, that's crazy. Because that makes it seem like people with more wealth live longer than poor people.
Exactly.
Which is not something that exists in reality that we live in. It's a literal, it is a literal hierarchy.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
But the irony in it is that people build so high that the air is so thin that it's unhealthy to live that high. Oh. And after generations, they've forgotten why they live so high. It's just how it works. And their lifespans are actually shortened because of the conditions living so high off the ground and the altitude being so thin.
So the middle ground.
So
that's where you'll want to be.
Yeah, so it's like, it flips it on its head in the sense
Yeah.
that it's like people's pride and people's desire for power drove them to like it's the total opposite result. And there's every story like this in Einstein's dreams kind of twists time in a certain way that's very interesting. And you can read a chapter in like 10 minutes, and so you can just like get through it in a couple weeks at a really steady pace, and it's really awesome. So Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lyman.
Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting as much.
It's okay. It's good. I liked it.
Max, you want to go?
Sure. I'll be honest, I haven't watched or played much media.
Okay, we're going to shame you for that. On the count of 3, we'll say shame once. That's just Isaac and I and you at home. 1, 2, 3, shame. Oh, it was just me. Now I feel shame. This is weird.
Wouldn't it be funny if I would have said shame?
You should have, but now the moment's gone.
So anyway,
shame, Jamison.
Oh,
shame.
No, it hurts.
So I recently rewatched Jaws, and I just kind of like am a little bit amazed of just like how great Steven Spielberg is. Like, obviously, Steven Spielberg's great, but like,
well, I don't know. Is he Christopher Nolan?
But like, this is like probably one of his. How many films had he made?
Spielberg?
Yeah, like
let's count them all from the beginning.
No, like before Jaws. Like
we'll
I know
his
he
television
did,
movie Duel.
Duel about like the tire that's like, or no, it's the car. No, it's the car
it's
that's
like a truck that's like a truck that's chasing
down
this guy
someone.
Down. Duel.
Then he did like a episode of Columbo, which
the
is
first
like,
episode of Columbo.
Which is possibly the best one.
It is great.
So good.
The first shot of it is amazing. How it like starts on the street and then pans in through a window into it's good. Watch Columbo maybe.
Columbo is pretty great.
I actually think that's for free on YouTube right now. I think they uploaded like almost every episode of Columbo.
Yeah.
I think Columbo has a YouTube channel where you can watch for free.
Well, no, I know Columbo is also on IMDb TV, which is like another free streaming service.
Yeah, so you have no excuse not to watch Columbo. Is the main point we're talking about.
Yeah.
But also continue talking about Jaws, because this is not the podcast recommends Columbo.
I am recommending Jaws.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was just like a little bit taken aback. Like normally, I feel like people don't consider Jaws a horror movie. When I would go to Blockbuster back in the day, man, Blockbuster, like I would find Jaws in the action section. Like you know what I mean. Personally,
Blockbuster messed up.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to because I don't. There's not even like a ton of action in Jaws. Like it's it is a movie of subdued moments and then sudden moments of not subduedness, and that's the correct term.
Thriller.
Yeah,
suspenseful thriller.
I could see thriller.
Well, it's kind of like a B-movie creature feature.
IMDb puts it under adventure thriller.
Yeah, all right,
which is interesting.
There is definite adventure elements.
Yeah, but also like the movie is surprisingly gory.
Yeah,
like I typically when I think of movies from the 70s or even 60s, I don't think of that much gore. I think of mild blood. But no, there's like a lot of blood in this movie. Like when you see like a shark attack in the water, it's like the entire 25-foot radius is just like pools of blood.
You got that shot with the leg dropping to the bottom, and it's like a trailing of blood, like a mist of blood. Yeah, and that's a child's foot, I believe.
Yeah. And a lot of it's pretty horrific for a movie that was made in 1975, for sure.
And so much of it is the sound design.
Yes, giving credit to John Williams as well, like for the score, which is amazing.
I get the score, but I mean like the literal.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like the sound of that lady getting dragged underwater in the opening attack of that movie bothers me. And that's a good thing, I guess, because you want it to, because you shouldn't watch a person getting eaten by a monster and think to yourself, huzzah, get out. Which is actually something you find yourself doing with a lot of monster movies. Is you're rooting for the monster, and I don't do that in Jaws. I feel that horror and that panic. Because Spielberg does such a good job of contextualizing it. Like, it's like this lady, and you're with her the whole time she's being eaten, and you don't see the monster, and it's just this horrifying thing. And then you don't really, you're not up and close and personal with the kid like you are with her. You are to an extent, but also you're like with that kid's mom. And that's the rough part of that, is like that, like seeing the horror on her face. Yeah.
So Jaws is a great movie. Still great.
Revisit it.
Yeah, please.
Revisit Jaws. Can we talk about the Cleveland show? No, absolutely not. I don't actually ever want the Cleveland show to be mentioned on this podcast ever again. We gotta hold each other to that. Unless we want to do an entire episode on the Cleveland show. I might go full. Either we do it, either we don't do it at all, or we become a Cleveland show podcast. I wish you guys could see Isaac's face right now. Anyhow, my actual recommendation is a show called Better Off Ted. Better Off Ted lasted for 2 seasons. 2 seasons of wonderful, quirky comedy with likable characters and very, very clever writing. It's a show about how this corporation mistreats its employees and their struggle to exist as moral individuals in a corporate society that doesn't care about morality at all. It is this one man's struggle to be an ethical man and to be a good man in a world and in a situation where it doesn't matter because of, whatever rampant capitalism and apathy towards workers. It also has just wonderful characters, these 2 goofy scientist characters. The show's kind of sci-fi. It has a bunch of not really sci-fi. I would call it very light. The first episode, they freeze a person in cryogenesis just because they can. Like, that's the episode. The company decides that they're just going to freeze one of their employees in a cryogenesis chamber just to see if they can do it. They don't really care if he's dead or not. It's stuff like that. The show it's a very clever commentary on how corporations don't care about the workers. They don't care about you as the consumer, but also about how the people working there have to struggle to be moral people in a very immoral environment. And it does all that while also balancing character drama that's funny and unique and just, it's hilarious. I love this show. It's so funny. It's so unique. Also, I don't know if anybody here has seen Arrested Development. But,
of course.
Yeah.
What's that?
Arrested Development?
Never heard of it.
Okay. But Portia de... I'm going to butcher that last name. Portia de Rossi, I think. Portia de Rossi. She is in the show as a boss, one of the bosses, and she is hilarious. It rivals her character on Arrested Development and just how much it makes me laugh. So I hope I said that name right.
Portia de Rossi.
Portia de Rossi, yeah, nailed it.
I mean,
so
I think
if you liked her on Arrested Development, you can watch her on Better Off Ted as a completely different character that is equally funny and equally unique. And and also I should mention the camera movement and editing and music of the show is unique to the sitcom format. There's a lot of these tracking shots and monologues delivered right to the audience, breaking the fourth wall, and just clever direction and very upbeat tempo. The editing's great. It's a fantastic show on all fronts. I can't recommend it enough. Watch Better Off Ted.
Perfect.
Right.
This has been Tangent this week. Is kind of a heavy one.
It's a yo-yo. It's been big laughs and big sads.
Again, we're a comedy conversationalist podcast.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah, for sure. So, some weeks will be more focused. Some weeks will be all over the place. I feel like next week is probably going to be more all over the place.
We are still establishing our identity and finding a groove, finding a tramway, discovering who we are.
We are in our infancy.
Yeah, and
sure.
We will grow and we will, like an infant. I'm not going to follow this metaphor anywhere. I could, but I will not.
Are we going back to the...
No, don't even bring it up.
Wait, are we going back to the
as
fact
always,
that we are your podcast
we
dads?
are traveling through the birthing canal.
Stop.
I remember now.
Stop.
That
Okay.
was such a great bit.
As always, you can send us an email, thetangentcast@gmail.com.
That's my favorite, gmail.com.
Or leave us a voice message at 479-339-3041. Once again, that's 479-339-3041. Yikes. Just realized I left the wrong phone number. So the right phone number is 479-339-9041.
So 479-339-9041.
Drop us what you thought about devs, your theories, your thoughts on free will.
Under 30 seconds.
Not necessarily.
Wow.
And then
I just don't want some dissertation to show up, and I don't want to feel obligated to listen to a 30-minute. Sorry, this is going to seem rude, but if you're out there being like, all right, here I go. Here's my college thesis, and I'm going to send it to this.
I'll listen to it.
Isaac will listen to it. I'm going to be very open with you.
And thank you for caring enough to want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, I hate you, and I will not listen to it.
Okay, well, Jamison will be uninvited.
I'll get the Spark Notes from.
yeah, for sure. So just send us your thoughts or your favorite book or album, or whatever.
Hit him with that number again.
I did it twice. You guys can go back. And
I like 3 times. That's okay. Perfect.
Hey, so this is mainly for you sheeple out there. You know, the ones that use Apple products. If you would like to, please leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, so we can boost our ratings up there and make us more known.
Do you want to explain that sheeple comment?
I think I'm good. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, obvious. That's the word I'd use. Okay.
So yeah, we'll catch you guys next week. All right.